Hare Krishna. Today I'm going to talk about the difference between saying something that's just invented and something that has a reference to it. And I want to start out with something that was written by Rupa Goswami in the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. It's in the first part, 1.2.101. The verse is something that Prabhupada quoted a lot. It goes, Shruti Smriti Puranadi Pancharatra Vidim Vina Ahaikantikir Her Bhaktir Utpataya Kalpate. And the translation reads, devotional service of the Lord that ignores the authorized Vedic scriptures like the Upanishads, Puranas, and Narada Pancharatra is simply an unnecessary disturbance in society. So this is from the Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, and it was quoted by Srila Prabhupada in different places. This is a very important verse because it shows that whatever is spoken should not be invented. It has to have some grounding in Vedic literature. So their three-point check system of Guru, Shastra, and Sadhu is based on this too. In academia, it's a very grave offense to engage in something that's sometimes known as plagiarism when somebody... Well, actually, plagiarism comes from a Latin root that means to steal. And when something is taken from a prior work, when it's quoted verbatim or it's paraphrased, sometimes that's known as plagiarism. And in one sense, nothing is plagiarized because there's nothing, as it's said, there's nothing new under the sun. And Krishna is the owner of everything, whether it's our own house, our own car, or our own body even. So there's two different types of things. The one is that we cannot plagiarize or steal, and another thing is that nothing belongs to us anyway, so we can't ever steal something that we don't actually own, that we're only loaned. Sometimes Brahma is considered to be the creator, but actually he's more of an engineer, and even though he creates things, those things have already been created. And so if Krishna is the actual owner and proprietor of everything, there's nothing original, really, under the sun. But at the same time, we have senses of ownership of our land, our bodies, our families, and we do actually own them. So this is a kind of a two-pronged thing. On the one hand, we own things, or we're the caretakers of certain things, and that's sanctioned by law. It's sanctioned by even Vedic scriptures, by the laws of Manu. On the other hand, we don't own anything because everything's actually ultimately owned by Krishna. So there's two things that are existing. In the Bhagavad Gita, in the 17th chapter, in the 15th verse, it is said that austerity of the speech consists, I'm quoting, austerity of speech consists in speaking words that are truthful, pleasing, beneficial, and not agitating to others, and also in regularly reciting Vedic literature. And in the purport, Prabhupada says that one should at once quote from scriptural authority to back up what he is saying. So this is also true in courts, for example, of law, where an expert lawyer has to cite precedent cases in order to strengthen his argument. And this is considered to be very important. Not only does he give citations of precedent cases, but sometimes even other laws and other that are stated, other rules and other statutes that are written down are quoted. So he's not just making things up. And an expert lawyer, it is said, can make the law illegal, or the law is an ass, as sometimes it is said. But the idea is that there are two things operating. One is that one can never be a proprietor of anything, and in another sense, one has to be the proprietor, or at least the caretaker of things like one's own automobile, one's own boat, one's own car, one's own airplane, one's own body, one's own family, and so on. And it's even a stricture in the Manu Samhita that if and Prabhupada quotes this too, that if someone steals something that doesn't belong to him, or pillages the house or sets fire to the house, that actually such a person can be killed, and that's just punishment. So two things are operating here. The importance of quoting from Vedic authorities is emphasized in these verses that I talked about in the Brahma Samhita and in the Bhagavad Gita in the purport, where Prabhupada says that it's important to quote from Vedic literature. One quotes from Vedic literature because sometimes we can stand on the shoulders of great people in the past and and say what they said, and it's not actually stealing. And Prabhupada himself said that I'm not doing anything original, I'm just repeating. That was the word he used, repeating. I'm repeating what's been already said. So there's something to be said for standing on the shoulders of great men of the past. And not only in scriptural circles, but in non-scriptural circles, this principle operates. Sometimes we quote from great literateurs like Shakespeare or Pushkin or whoever it may be, and in that sense, it's okay. But there's something called intellectual property rights, and there's patent laws and things like that, in which governments and courts try to regulate the ownership of something, whether you can actually own something. This reaches a kind of absurd level in the sense that, for example, like basmati rice is the type of rice that's been grown for centuries in India. But certain American people say they have the intellectual rights and they own basmati rice, and that the Indian people who are growing it are in violation of international treaties. So this is where ownership can reach an absurdity. And plagiarism is invoked to do something that it becomes very absurd, actually. So this is the dilemma that we're faced with. On the one hand, we can own something. On the other hand, we can't own anything, because Krishna owns everything, whether it's an intellectual thing or whether it's a physical thing. And there's laws of Manu. So both things exist simultaneously. The sense of ownership and the sense that we don't own anything. And technically in Sanskrit, I think this is known as nirmama, that nothing is mine, or I don't own anything. So we own some things, or we are the eternal custodians of certain things, but other things that exist, well, we can't actually say we own them. And as I was saying, in intellectual circles, plagiarism is considered a very grave offense, and people have lost their degrees because of this, because they have said to have plagiarized or borrowed, so to speak, too much from other people who have gone before them. And so in order to write, for example, a thesis or a dissertation for a PhD degree, one has to come up with something that is so-called original. It has to be, the subject of it has to be original enough so that it satisfies the examiners that it's completely original and it's not something that someone else has exhaustively explored. And this is the sense that where plagiarism becomes a bit absurd. And in certain circles, like in journalism, for example, many journalists, they look on websites and throughout different aspects of the internet to find out original material, whether it's statistical or something else, but they have to come up with something that is so-called to be original. Whether it is or not, it may not be known. I think an article was written once in the Guardian, one of the newspapers of England, about this thing about plagiarism, and there's a particular person, an Irish playwright and author, who wanted to say very concise and very pithy things, and but he wasn't able to say them. And one of his friends said that he would say them in the future, even though he wasn't able to say them now. So sometimes it's very often that we quote great people of the past, and because they have very important and deep insights into things that are important to us. The person that I was talking about was named Oscar Wilde, and he is very well known for writing things. And once he said that, I wish I had said that. One of his colleagues said, "Well, don't worry, you will say it." So whether you say it verbatim as the person who went before said it, or whether you say it in a somewhat changed form, tweaked form, or altered format, it doesn't matter. It still can be considered plagiaristic or stealing. And some people have even said that many of Shakespeare's plays were stolen from people like Francis Bacon or other people who maybe went before and who wrote the same stories. But the point is that someone who is a brilliant writer, like Shakespeare, or in other countries maybe someone like Pushkin, wrote them and in a way that people liked the way they were done, the way they were said. So in this way, it's not actually stealing. It's a matter of saying things in a way that not only pleases but also entertains people. So in Vedic literature, it's very important that things are not made up. It's said that if they are made up, there are, as it's said in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, an unnecessary disturbance in society. And there are lots of people who engage in penances that are what we call penances in the mode of ignorance. There was a person, this really happened, who rolled on his side, and he had special bandages on his elbows and on his knees so that he wouldn't get damaged. But he rolled all through the southern India, all the way up to the Himalayas someplace. And the goal was, in the end, he was able to ride on a chariot with garlands of marigolds with his guru. That was his penance in the mode of ignorance, we might say. It's written in the 17th chapter. Hare Krishna.